What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, I guess reporting live from the Greensboro Coliseum after Carolina's 85-61 win over Boston College in the ACC Tournament second round. Heels advancing to play UVA tomorrow at 7 p.m. AJ, real quickly, let me run through some stats and then I'll kick it to you. We'll dive into this. Caleb Love led the way, 22 points, 4 rebounds. Big night for him. RJ Davis right behind him with 18 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Love and Davis combined to shoot 16 from 32 for the floor. So they were big time tonight. Pete Nance, 10 points. Armando Bacot, 10 points, 6 rebounds, despite the ankle, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. But AJ, let's start with the offense, because Carolina looked really good offensively tonight, and that's something we haven't really been able to say for a majority of this season at times, especially of late. So I thought the movement was better. I thought because of that, Carolina got better shots. They spaced the floor. And AJ, when they space the floor, it's no coincidence that Caleb Love has a little bit better of a night. That's you and David went at it at length in your podcast earlier this week about how he plays better when the floor is spaced. I don't think it's a coincidence we saw him have a big night tonight. But overall, AJ, it's one of the better offensive performances we've seen in a while from the Tar Heels, probably. Maybe the Clemson game.
Yeah, space on the floor with movement. A lot of teams space the floor, and a lot of times this team spaces the floor, but there's no movement.
Yeah, it's stagnant, yeah.
So, and there's no movement, and you're easy to defend. That's one of the reasons double teams have been so successful against this team the last 6 weeks, is because someone leaves their man to double Armando or whoever, and the guy that they left, whose man they left, doesn't move. I mean, the movement's really been really poor a lot of the time, but it was very good tonight. And really, in 3 of the last 4 games, it's been pretty good. It was very good against Virginia 2 weeks ago. It was really good in the first half at Florida State and for stretches of the second, but at times it wasn't. And tonight it was outstanding the whole night. There was sort of an openness to their game, a freedom to their game tonight. And it helps that we got to sit around the floor. I was right in the front row on the floor and got to see some of the communication and see the use of screens. Now, I do think Caleb should probably use the screen more often and not dribble into double teams, as he did quite a bit in the second half.
Yeah.
But that's also part of the game. And I think what happened is they were hedging a lot on RJ and Caleb. They really wanted to flash a double there on them to try to make them give up the ball. And because they know that sometimes there's a couple of dudes on the floor that have a tough time scoring, and they were able to get stuff out of that. If you get rid of the ball, if you're doubled on the right wing or above right wing, sort of above the elbow, and you get rid of the ball to somebody, there's freedom. Someone could be moving, and they moved tonight. They cut to the baseline. They cut down the middle. We saw a lot of buckets that were assisted because guys were cutting. It wasn't just somebody swung the ball on the perimeter and a guy made a shot, or it wasn't just a generic entry dump into the post and someone turned and scored. There was a lot of movement connected to a lot of the assists tonight. And it's no secret that when a team plays like that, any team, they're going to be better. They're going to be more efficient offensively. They're going to find better looks, and they're going to have a lot more mojo to their looks. And I asked RJ tonight, I said, how early in the game did you realize you guys had the right mojo? And he said right away, right from the tip. He knew they had the mojo. And I could tell too. They scored on 7 of their first 8 possessions. Actually, it was 7 straights they missed in the first. And they go 7 straight possessions with scoring. So they had it. Of course, the key for this team is you have it for a stretch, but you got to maintain it. And they did maintain it because they made things easy for themselves, because they moved. And then when they moved, there was awareness and recognition. They swung the ball. And, BC, no pun intended, was on its heels a lot defensively. They had a terrible time with rotations because Carolina was able to find quote-unquote hot spots on the floor, spots on the floor where these Tar Heels can actually do some damage. And I think of the threes, were any of the threes really contested? I think Puff shot one that was pretty contested, and that wasn't the air ball one. That was one that Puff shot in the second half that was pretty contested. And there may have been one with Dunn. I think Dunn shot one right at the end of the shot clock that was a little bit contested. But the other 22 threes, I can't remember any that were contested. And when you can get that on a team that has been very easy to guard at times, more often than not, that's what other teams say, and that's what these kids have said at times. Then that means that you're really percolating offensively. And they were percolating offensively tonight. They were 16 for 22 on layups, and they were 10 for 24 from 3. Yeah. That's good basketball. Good. And that doesn't happen because the other team's not very good. Because I think BC's a pretty solid team. much better than its record, and certainly been playing pretty well of late. And I thought that they would be able to maybe give Carolina some trouble, make them a little bit uncomfortable. Didn't happen. Carolina made BC uncomfortable from the opening tip, and other than one little stretch of the second half, they maintained it.
Yeah, they were great tonight. Carolina shot 54.8% from the floor, 41.7% from three. AJ, real quickly, just to stay on that, was Carolina noticeably maybe more loose before the game? That's something we've kind of talked about before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess I'll go with this because I asked a couple guys about it, and Puff said, look, we knew we had to come in here and win 4 games in 4 nights. And I did talk to Trounces about that too. And by the way, the Trounces video is great. Carolina fans constantly ask questions about Trounces. Well, he answered some of the questions tonight when I talked to him in the locker rooms. Check out our video here on Tar Heel Illustrated about that. Yeah, some of the guys said, look, there's sometimes a people or a group of people when they enter into a situation like this team was, where you have to win 4 in 4 nights, that you might be really tight at the beginning. And what is the magic potion to being loose and just playing for one night, which is what I was asking Hubert about after the game Saturday. And he kind of pushed back on the question. My question was, they know they got to win 4 in 4. They just told us. So how do you get them to the point where they just got to win 1 in 1? Because you can't win 4 without winning the first. And I thought that we saw that in the way they played on both ends of the floor, but absolutely offensively. They had great mojo offensively, great fluidity. And it was clearly an indication that this team was loose. They were playing for tonight. They weren't playing for tomorrow. And as a result, they stayed in character for 40 minutes, and it served them well because they got a not just a needed win, obviously. Now they got 20 wins. They have more that they have to do, but they got a win that kind of got them a little bit of postseason groove right out of the gate. So we'll see if it carries. But in one night, at least, this was a really good performance by this team, a loose performance, a fluid performance, a connected performance. And that's how that happens when you win by 20-plus points.
Yeah, they can be consistent. They can definitely do some damage in the postseason. AJ, let's keep it moving. Talking about the second half a little bit. I know it wasn't always, it was smooth sailing most of the night for the Tar Heels. I think they felt comfortable. BC did make a little bit of a push in the second half, and we've talked about it nauseum after, so many games this year where the next step for this team has always kind of been being able to put the foot on the neck of a team and say, you know what, no, like we're not going to let you come back into this one. We're going to keep it moving, and we're going to keep pulling away. And I think that's what the Tar Heels did. Like I said, BC did creep back in, but Carolina really never let them get too close. And for me, again, I think that's a big positive. We've talked about human nature all the time. It's human nature sometimes when you're up by 20-plus points to just relax and let the team come back into it. I think maybe that crept in a little bit in the second half, but Carolina responded in a positive way. So again, another positive to take into tomorrow night. Well,
it's an area, a point of contention for a lot of Carolina fans. Yeah. And I think for them, because we ask them about it all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I asked RJ, I said, we ask you a lot. You get in that situation there. A lot of times you guys don't handle it well. And now maybe the stress wasn't there yet because BC won an 11-2 run. They cut it to 60-42. Okay. Mm-hmm. In the grand scheme of things, that wasn't a dire situation, but it was trending where it could be. Because there was just under 11 minutes left, and this team has had trouble during that parts of games, as you noted. What they did was they responded with a quick 6-0 spurt, and it was very visible from where I was sitting courtside that whatever juice BC had to get that 11-2 run, to maybe get a little bit closer, maybe a 17-4 run would have made Carolina a little bit tight. All the juice was drained from BC because RJ hit a pull-up jumper on the right side. Caleb hit one almost the exact same spot on the other side. And then the Carolina got a layup, quick 6-0 spurt, and they were in control the rest of the way. The game was effectively over. So it's a small thing, but it's also a big thing because just a week ago, 9 days ago, when I was in Tallahassee, they let Florida State come back from a big deficit, and they didn't handle it well, and they kept not handling it well. Tonight, there were maybe a couple of instances where Caleb got a lot of control with the handle. One time he threw a bad pass when he was driving, just leaves his feet like he does sometimes, and then he's going to do it the ball and just kind of chucked it. And they had a little stretch, RJ said, where they weren't playing great defensively during that period, and they kind of clamped down a little bit more. And that was one of the messages. There was a TV timeout or something around the 66-42 was the score, or maybe BC had called a timeout because of that spurt. And RJ said the emphasis was you got to clamp down on defense. If you have great energy, it's always going to show on defense. It may not result in positive stuff on offense, but it'll always show on defense. And they did. They picked it up. I believe that Nance had another block at the rim, which was a very impressive block, and they were able to get the ball, push it up the floor, get a lot of guys involved. And that was a sequence where a couple of times they turned some defense into some offense, which I think they they scored like 16, 18 points off turnovers tonight.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
A lot of that was after good, it wasn't just missed shots. They were good defensive sets. And that's what they needed. It was a combination of good offense, good defense leading offense in a sequence. And they pulled away. So given the kind of year that they've had and given how we do nitpick at times, if we're going to nitpick when something like that happens and it goes wrong and they still win, we've got to point out that they cut it off before it became a problem. And I thought that was a really good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another positive, I think, like I said, to take into the rest of the tournament. Last thing I want to talk about, AJ, kind of like we always do, looking ahead. Obviously, Carolina advances to play UVA tomorrow night, 7 p.m., same in the Greensboro Coliseum, ACC Tournament quarterfinals. Give us an update on Armando Bacot if you got anything after the game, because I know it was a great situation for Carolina because they didn't really need him, and it was also good that he did come back in and play a little bit. But you could wake up tomorrow and your ankle's ballooned up, so he probably will be a game time decision. But any updates you have on that, because they're definitely going to need him tomorrow night against the Wahoo. Yeah. I think that's going to be a tough game.
I don't think it'll be game time. When I walked in the locker room after the game, he was in there. In fact, he was starting to sit down to take questions from reporters, and they ushered him out. Excuse me. They ushered him out to get treatment. So he looked fine. He was going to be happy sitting there talking to us. I don't think there'll be an issue. They took him out. They brought him back and had him play because you need to see how he responds, how a player responds to the ankle. And number two, by getting him out there and playing and getting it loose and sweating and stuff like that, he'll wake up tomorrow. It won't be as stiff as if he didn't play at all. Yeah. So that's why he went in. So people were complaining he was in the game, but he's going to be better when he wakes up tomorrow morning because he went back in. Plus, they know a lot more about what it is that he experienced. So I don't think it'll be an issue. He did show that he was hurt when he was on the court during that time. There were a couple times where he turned his body and he didn't put that foot on the ground all the way. He kind of used a one-leg turn. And it was very noticeable. And twice, it was 3 times. Twice was actually during play, and once was on a dead ball. So, but God, this program has a history of ankles during the NCAA tournament.
About ankles in the postseason.
And Doug Halverson and his crew are phenomenal getting these kids ready because they have a wonderful history of success. Remember Joel Berry's ankle in 2017? Yes, absolutely. We had Armando's last year in New Orleans. So I don't think that'll be an issue. I think what's good for this team is that the bench played 56 minutes. I kind of thought they should have played more, but that's always the case. But the starters were able to come out. And although Caleb played to like 250 left or something like that, I thought he should have come out earlier too. But, they say 5-7 minutes, which will help because they got to play tomorrow. And if they win tomorrow, it will help because there is a residual effect. The treatment's a little bit different when you have to play the next day than it is if you have even just one day in between games. So the biggest key for them tonight is getting the treatment, getting the rest that they need, and getting their bodies replenished. And for Armando, keep the ankle up. And just come out tomorrow and give it a go. So it'll be very interesting to see how they handle UVA. They played them twice this year, and I think those are 2 of their best games. The one in Charlottesville when they lost, I thought was a really good performance by the Tar Heels because they didn't have Pete, and Armando went down a minute 12 into the game, or a minute 18 into the game. He played 78 seconds, and they battled Jalen Washington's best game. Yeah. Part of it, I think, was he kind of fit in a game like that because he's still a finesse guy. He's not a banger yet. And I think that his finesse allowed him to find some of those little pockets in UVA's defense. Plus, UVA didn't scout him. They had no idea what he would bring to the table. He came in on the floor. And they adjusted a little bit, and he didn't have much production in the second half. And then, of course, they played very well against UVA a couple of weeks ago. I have no idea what to expect from either team tomorrow because UVA has not been trending in a great direction. And, Carolina is like the stock market, man. They're just up and down.
You just never know what you're going to get.
And it's funny. They were hitting all those threes, and someone sitting next to me said, man, they ought to save a few for tomorrow night.
Real.
So they've only had one game this year twice in 2-game stretch this year where they've hit a lot of threes in consecutive games. And that was Virginia, Florida State here recently. Yeah. And in fact, they were like 18% from 3 in the 6 games leading up to Virginia. And then they were 24 for 51 against the Cavaliers and against the Seminoles. And then they went 5 for 23 against Duke. So this is the third time in 3 or 4 games they've hit double-figure threes. And I think another positive tonight too, and kind of rambling here, but I did a note in my 5 things to watch for that Carolina has not been getting a lot of layup opportunities lately. Just not many at all, and they've been shooting 31% or something, 36% on layups. Well, 16 for 22 is a good sign tonight. because they attacked, and they just didn't attack with the dribble. They attacked with the pass. They attacked with the movement that we talked about earlier. So I think they're going to take a lot of good stuff into tomorrow, but they're going to play a totally different team, and a team that's far more confident, a team that has more weapons, and a team obviously that has a history of putting stress on the Tar Heels offensively. So they need to have the right mojo, and if missed shots occur, they need to keep the mojo. Leakey said tonight that it helped them make shots to keep the mojo going. So you want to be able to be at a point in March where if the shots aren't falling, you're still defending. Watch Houston play. Watch them defend. Kelvin Sampson's teams defend. Shots don't always go through, but they're still defending. This team hasn't gotten that point yet, and they kind of admit it. So that's a tough spot to be in when you're trying to advance in March, but they'll have an opportunity tomorrow, because I suspect having 2 straight really good shooting games against Virginia is almost impossible. So they may have to, in order to advance, they may have to do the gritty stuff, and they're going to have to defend, and they're going to have to defend if the ball's not going through, because it may not go through. And as we've said many times, and the Tar Heels are saying this as well, they didn't shy from it at all tonight. They got to win 4 games in 4 nights. Now they only have to win 3 in 3 nights.
Yeah, job got a little bit easier after tonight's win over Boston College, 85-61 win for the Tar Heels. We're going to go ahead and run because AJ is on borrowed time up at that podium right now, aren't you?
Yeah, they're being very nice. Let me sit up here, so I'm very appreciative.
Yeah,
and
very
hopefully, if I'm really, really nice, they'll let me do it tomorrow night too.
Yeah, wait, tune in tomorrow night to see what happens, guys. Again, Carolina getting the big win over Boston College. Yeah, you got the mic too. You sound great, man. Keep up the mic. It's a nice backdrop too. Hopefully, you will be able to sit there tomorrow night. It's a good one. Good one for sure. Right. But AJ, we'll go ahead and run. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your ACC tournament coverage. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well. See you on the next one. Thanks.